Hello, I'm Maria Hall-Brown, and this is LA Currents. Responsible for watershed protection, wastewater treatment, and collection of solid resources, LA Sanitation and Environment had to make some pretty dramatic changes when the virus hit the city. But fortunately, those changes were made, and here to explain what happened, Enrique Zaldivar. He is the Director and GM of LA Sanitation and Environment. So nice to have you here. Okay, I got to start right off the bat with the show and tell. When LA Sanitation had to make adjustments to the departments, you put together something pretty special for your employees.
That's right. So, as you said, Maria, the change occurred obviously very abruptly, and for us, it meant that much of our workforce needed to stay working.
Yes.
But the hand sanitizer became a critical item that we
couldn't find.
Nowhere to be able to buy it. I mean, scouring the entire country, around the world, obviously. So we found not just the will, the idea, but we had the capacity to make it in-house. So we came up with what is now known as the LA Sanitizer. And if you open one of those little packets, you will see it's a spray bottle with the hand sanitizer that now every employee in the department is given as a constant supply to maintain the recommended mitigation measures.
Look at that.
So that's the LA Zone sanitizer. Now the other items, of course, have become a standard issue for things that must be worn when in the office or in public.
Right, and a nice little clearly defined how to stay safe and keep clean. It was very, very cute.
Right.
Well, this is very creative and inventive, and I know that there are a lot of changes that had to happen pretty rapidly within your department, especially now that things have changed in terms of, I know one of your priorities has always been plastics. You were a proponent of making sure single-use plastic bags were gone, and now we're all back to disposable plastic. So are you seeing an increase in people's at-home refuse and the kind of trash that you are going to have to deal with out on the streets?
Well, it's very, very interesting, although intuitive for sure, that as folks stayed at home,
right.
Not just longer, but also in larger numbers. It's true of a lot of families, certainly it's true of mine, where more of us now are at home than we were before. There's been a shift in terms of solid waste generation for a number of reasons. As you said, Maria, number one is folks have gone from working in the office to now teleworking at the house.
Right.
Far more items are being purchased online.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen about a 20% plus shift in the generation of solid waste. The residential generation has gone up by close to 20% plus. The commercial, industrial, and institutional has gone down, especially with so many businesses being out of commission. Mm-hmm. That has gone down by close to 30%.
So how are you handling the residential increase? I mean, obviously everybody has their cans, their recycling cans and their refuse cans. Are you allowing residents then to, have extra bags there instead of just cans? And how has that affected the automation part of your trucks? Because that's kind of what they're used to doing.
So very interesting adaptation, and actually Mayor Garcetti thought this through as well. I said, the shift, we have to recognize and react to what has happened. And so we, through the mayor, we made an offering that we call free refills. Mm. So by that we mean that any one resident has the ability and the option to bring extra bags that would not fit within any of the containers that they have at home, but do it in a way where the driver wouldn't get out of the truck and the resident wouldn't have to come in too close to the truck. So a container would be emptied, in this case a black container or a blue container. The driver will set it back down. It's empty now. The driver would withdraw the automated arm. The resident can now walk up to the container and deposit the extra bags in the container.
Okay.
So no one has to be near each other. It's done safely, and then the best part of it is that the resident is given the convenience of disposing of their extra items. That's true of the extra recyclables as well.
Are you suggesting different things in regards to keeping both the residents and the department employees safe in terms of what you should be doing with your trash containers now, or what you should be doing with your recyclables now? I mean, is there an additional protocol that you're hoping people will use to hopefully mitigate the transference of anything?
We definitely want to avoid any contact and any proximity. You know, one of the most difficult things for our drivers has been, you know, they want to be close to their customers.
Sure.
It's not just the waving, it's, you know, making sure that they serve their customers, our residents. So that was true before, where they oftentimes would dismount and help and do other things. That we cannot do right now, and so we want to avoid any circumstance by which either the resident or our driver would have to come close to each other, or even hand things off to each
Right.
other. So that we definitely want to avoid, and you know, and still the eye contact is important, and our drivers appreciate the eye contact, the smile.
Sure.
So that can still continue, the wave, but anything that is in close proximity, or obviously no handshaking or none of that.
Oh, sure. Do you think it helps somewhat once the bin is empty, both recyclable and refuse? Should we be spraying it down with any kind of sanitizer? Does that help at all, or is that, you know, an unnecessary move?
I think it can help. We have not made it a recommended practice per
Sure.
se, but definitely helps. I think everyone's got to feel right about what they're doing, and you know, the wheeling of the container out to the curb, and if depending on whether folks think that others may have touched it or not. So for sure, you know, being able to wipe the handles as they are wheeled and they're retrieved back, that would be a good practice.
Yeah, I could see
Yes.
that, definitely. In addition to, obviously, the picking up of refuse and recyclables, et cetera, there has been a huge increase in people utilizing wipes and utilizing things to keep their surfaces. And I had heard that there is now a problem with people flushing those that should not be flushed. Have you noticed issues with the wastewater treatment plant and things happening beyond just people having plumbing problems, which is absurd?
Right. You know, it's interesting, Maria, how sort of what appear to be oftentimes the most basic of activities, not trivial, because none of this is trivial, can cause such huge problems if we don't address them. But wipes is one of those.
Yeah.
You know, they provide an incredible utility to the customers, to the residents, especially now, as you said. And then there's this problem of mislabeling, where so many of the wipes are labeled as flushable.
Right.
Which, of course, you know, we would go by what the label reads, and if it's flushable, it's flushable. Well, they're not. Many of them are not, if not most of them. And so over time, yes, well, it could be in someone's very own home. There's a clog, and before you know it, there's, you know, a backup.
Right.
And if it gets deeper into our system, then our pumping plants can get clogged up. And that's a major environmental issue with spills coming out onto the street, pipes backing up into people's basements, sometimes into people's living rooms. So the tiny, innocent-looking wipe can be quite the ravaging,
Right.
you know.
Well, you're responsible for the largest wastewater treatment plant in the country, so I imagine that once it gets into that arena too, we're talking about some pretty large challenges to make sure that the water gets treated properly and is purified once again.
Yes, and you know, anything that goes in will show up at our treatment plant, Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, where we're very well on our way of making it the largest recycled water production facility in the world.
Wow.
That our goal, Mayor Garcetti's goal, is to do that by 2035. That's only 15 years away.
Yeah.
But it is certainly, in my view, a beautiful facility. It does have the best view in the city, by the way.
Does it really?
It looks straight out onto Santa Monica Bay. Water frontage, coastal frontage, beautiful views. So, you know, all of our folks who work there, when I go there, I just feel so fortunate.
Oh,
But-
well, I'm wondering, are there conversations as well about, because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, people are utilizing chemicals, they're utilizing, you know, even these sanitation efforts that are adding an additional amount of chemicals into the wastewater, et cetera. Is there a concern with the uptick in chemicals that are being used across the city that is going into the water?
Yes, and thank you for that question, because you know, the normal instinct would be that anything liquid and flushable wipes too, it can go into the sewer system, and that is not obviously the case. There is such thing as household hazardous waste. Any chemical that is used in a household, anything left over does not go in the sewer. We have other services, in this case our safe centers. These are collection depots, points where folks, we ask residents to bring them to that location to get rid of any extra paint, any extra disinfectant, any extra, anything, Lysol, chlorine.
Batteries?
Especially batteries. Oh my goodness, because especially batteries, which would go in the, folks would put them in the trash, but they don't go in the trash either. And you know, just our evolution in society have made certain things hazardous that we should handle them differently. Same is true of telephones, any electronic waste. We handle that outside of the trash bin. That's handled differently through our safe collection centers.
Are they open, by the way, during this time?
Well, you know, we did shut them down. That was another victim facility in the beginning of COVID. We're looking to reopen within the next 2 weeks.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yes.
So people should collect these things in a separate location and then be able to take them down to safe when it opens in a couple weeks versus putting them in the trash or down the sewer pipes.
Yes, I think that's a great advice. Store them in a box, and then once we reopen, which will be soon, yes, they can bring them.
Beyond just the residents of the city of Los Angeles, obviously LASAN is responsible for the city at large. So what are some of the efforts that have taken place to make sure the city's streets themselves are clean and to make sure that people still have a level of confidence when they're outside now that their lives have shifted somewhat, and perhaps we'll see more people on the streets walking and biking instead of staying in their cars. So what are some of the things that are happening just in the general areas of the city that you've had to mitigate?
And you know, we want to always be grounded. We want to always understand how any one resident would go about their business in this city on a daily basis.
Right.
Whether it's a pedestrian, whether it's someone driving, whether it's someone getting on the bus or mass transit like I am, you know, litter can define oftentimes the image of a city.
Sure.
And we want to tackle it from the ground up. That is that, you know, folks enjoy drinking a cup of coffee while they're walking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, how long before you have to find a place to get rid of the cup?
Mm-hmm.
If there are no places to get rid of the cup, you know, are folks going to continue to carry the cup?
No, they're going to toss it.
You would want to believe that they would, but that's not practical.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be places where folks can toss it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we come in. So through Mayor Garcetti's leadership and the City Council, right now there are over 12,000 litter bins all throughout the city. And we're going to add more so that at some point there's almost like a saturation point that you will never have to walk more than a block to find a place to get rid of it.
Right.
That eliminates the litter problem that can be so defining.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, speaking of people getting to the streets, I mean, we have seen recently a lot of the protests and, you know, multiple tens of thousands of people walking through the street of Los Angeles. How did that affect your department and your employees? Did you have to call a lot of extra people in to go help clean up after the fact? I mean, how did that affect LASAN?
Yes, we were very much part of the response team that our job was to clean up following the demonstrations, whether it was litter, whether it was debris, anything of that nature. So we had close to 200 people every single day in the areas of the demonstration, and we continue to support the cleanup afterwards. That's one of those areas where necessarily having a bunch of trash containers in the midst of the demonstration can always have a catch-22 because we certainly don't want the trash bins to themselves become something that could be set on fire or anything like that. So we would come in afterwards,
right,
and ensure that we cleaned up right after, working through the night and early morning. We 4 a.m. through midnight or so.
I know that one of the things that you're very concerned about is civic safety and the appearance of the city, but also we do have a homeless problem, an unhoused problem, and I know that your department has been working to try to help in that regard with whatever debris might be left over from an encampment that's been abandoned or something like that, or some shifts have been made. So what are some of the things that you have learned and dealt with the homeless problem?
Well, we definitely want to stay true to our mission, which is to protect public health for all residents, including obviously the homeless community. And so our services are intended to do exactly that. We have grown in capacity. We have grown in our portfolio of services related to homeless community, unsheltered community. There's no argument that the best place for any one person is to be in a home or in a place indoors. We, of course, for as long as folks are living in the street, we want to ensure that there's public health protection all around. And so we now offer hygiene services, as an example, where folks can in the homeless community can be afforded a shower. I mean, Maria, the feeling that I have witnessed and on my frequent visits to our field, to the field, and to be able to see a person coming out after taking a warm shower, a warm water shower.
Where do you provide those services? Do you bring it to them, or is there locations that they go to? What are the?
We
where
do
are
it both ways.
Okay.
We have a mobile hygiene service. We have 13 of those stations. So we go to the encampments.
Oh, interesting.
Along with the other complement of our services. So we have created, in essence, a platform of services. We now have done clothing giveaways as part of our platform of services. We have toiletry giveaways. We have basic first aid services. If someone has an open cut, small, we provide first aid right while they're waiting to take a shower. During the COVID, right now, through the mayor's leadership, we have a partnership with the YMCA where we have 11 locations, Y locations, available for showers.
Wow.
And, on any given, we just surpassed the 1,000 shower a week threshold. We started modest, and boy, it became popular quickly. And so now that's still going on. We are going to intend to run that for another month, the month of July. And but we started that in April.
It's surprising to me how much, I mean, kind of, walking into just hearing about LA Sanitation, you sort of have this is what it does, it picks up the trash, it takes care of the water treatment, et cetera. But there's this enormous array of different services that your department provides that I don't think, even fun things, and I know that a lot of things have to be taken into consideration with the COVID that you cannot do. But you had an Earth Day bingo to have an LA Sand truck come to a house. How did that go?
Well, very popular, by the way. And, we have those little mini trucks.
Yes.
Which are adorable.
Sure, you can say that.
And they're an exact replica of our big size trucks, and they're really nice. And so, like on our Earth Day events, we give those away to the kids, and they are just popular as you can imagine. And so, yes, I think we're obviously here to serve and service the residents of the city and we are an asset of the city. But I think we have to speak more about all the many things we do for the residents.
Right.
LA River is a great example. I mean, most folks don't know that during the dry years, the dry months of the year, there is a river because of the recycled water we put in the river. And now under our watershed program, as you indicated, Maria, being able to maintain and keep the water clean so that we can enable things like kayaking. I mean, that's my favorite part of the river, by the way, because every year I go on my kayaking excursion. And once you have done that,
you look at the river in a whole new way, I imagine.
Absolutely. It's a complete transformation. But, not everyone would want to do the kayaking. So, well, you have to at least get to the embankments, because then you will experience the river very differently than if you just sit on top of a bridge or from afar. The closest you can get to the river, obviously, is the kayaking.
Right.
You don't go in the water, but you may if it tips over. I did.
And you're here to talk about it. No, I know. It's and I love that whole idea of the focus of attention, making Los Angeles a greener city and a more naturally based, conducive city. Are you at all worried about the fact that some of these programs have to just sort of go on pause right now because of the virus, or are you feeling as if they're continuing in spite of the virus?
Well, some have taken a pause. The kayaking is a perfect example.
Right.
This would have been the kayaking season, but we suspended that, and we're looking to see if we can still sponsor a fishing competition.
Interesting.
In the LA River.
Are you telling me there are fish in the LA River?
Yes, of course.
Who knew? What kind?
You know, darn it, I should know all of the different species, but
Well, you could say anything and I wouldn't know
no,
anyway.
I know. I almost say trout, but no. There are some, and some are actually native to the LA River, and you know we have embraced things like naturalized species, and we have an incredible and growing biodiversity program, by the way, within LASAN. Speaking of things that you wouldn't think of LA Sanitation and Environment necessarily being involved in, but we lead a program under the biodiversity tagline that creates habitats called ecotopes, where species can thrive or can exist at the very local level, at the community level, so that, you know, everyone gets to hear the birds chirp. You know, not everybody welcomes coyotes, but, well, okay, fine. But all those kinds of ways of promoting a sustainable local habitat, that's under our biodiversity program, and the LA River is part of it.
Have you noticed a dramatic change in your tenure with LASAN, that things have improved? I mean, you get intimate looks at different areas that maybe the larger population doesn't get to see, but have you seen things progress forward? Are we better now than we were when you began?
Yes, and you know that's something very, very fulfilling for me, in that we have definitely, as a society, as Angelenos, have become very mindful of resource conservation and resource recovery. Something we were not 30 years prior. You know, everything was about disposing things. We have turned the tide on that at the societal level, which is here to stay. And that's incredible. That's incredible people power, because then, you know, as we come up with things like you mentioned earlier, the single-use plastic bag ban, we were able to do that with hardly any education. Hardly. No need for any enforcement, because folks adapted to it. The mindset's there. And that's an incredible power to be able to do things in that direction.
Well, I'm just in the limited time we've had together, you know, you seem to be a very forward-thinking, optimistic, positive person. So are you feeling okay with how people are behaving in terms of keeping their environmental thoughts in their minds, even though we're kind of going back to a somewhat disposable world for a short time?
You know, Maria, that's a question that I had actually contemplated prior, because keep in mind, our mission is to protect public health and the environment.
Right.
Well, those two usually are complementary, but there are times in which they may clash. So protecting public health by not having reusable
Anything.
dinnerware,
Yeah,
for example.
exactly.
So this is the one instance in which public health can trump environmental protection until we're able to get them to be complementary again. So we're in the midst of that right now. I mean, you saw obviously where stores had no longer be required, where they were not requiring people bringing their reusable bags.
Right.
And giving away thicker plastic bags, and you know, the governor relaxed the state requirement. We were fine with it, because what became more important then is that folks needed to feel safer about their public health.
Right.
So that's one instance where, not that I had anticipated, but I knew it could happen.
Right. Well, we're all making adjustments, that for sure. But when all of this is passed and when all of things are back open again, I think I need to go to the water treatment plant and see the best view in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. We have, you know, our tour there is one of the more popular things to do in LA. So, no, you would definitely enjoy it. We have a great education center there too, right in view of the ocean. It's a beautiful place.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.